Hi, friends. Today is 10 common languages and how to tell which is which. And by common languages, I mean ones that you may well find old things in that would be good to sell on, eBay and so forth. Um, they're not the most common languages in the world by any means, or the most spoken or anything like that. They're just things that I tend to find in um, the United States in terms of old ephemera and so forth. So, without further ado, here are some tools and tips for my top 10 arbitrary languages. So, first things first, you probably already know about Google Translate. At translate.google.com. It is the coolest thing, possibly since sliced bread, though I don't think sliced bread is that cool, so hard to say. But um, I generally would say your first line of attack should be to download the free Google Translate app for your smartphone, put it on the photo mode, and point it at the thing in which is a language that you cannot identify. And more often than not, it will tell you what it is or give you a very good clue, though not always. Depends on the typeface and stuff, but that's a great place to start. If you are puttering around on your desktop computer, you can use the desktop version, and there's lots of um, fun things you can do. First, put it on detect language, and you can, well, it will detect the language if you type in a word. Look for something sort of long or characteristic. Um, I don't know, I just think this is the coolest. So, like, if we, and you don't have to worry about accents either. Let's see. Oh, it's French. And I didn't put the accent in. Um, oh, it's Italian. Like, let's see. Oh, it's German, and I didn't put that. I think there's supposed to be an accent in there. Not sure. Um, and like if you have a language that's not in the Roman alphabet, it's a little trickier because you have to take a guess as to what it is so you can use the right keyboard. But okay, so you can choose from all of these. So say you have something that looks like it might be Russian. Start with a Russian. Maybe go to um, Belarusian, um, or next, or Ukrainian. Sort of make your way through the possible suspects. Kazakh. Actually, I don't think they use that alphabet. But anyway, um, so let's pretend we found something that looks like Russian. And so you're like, how do I type in Russian? Well, use this input drop down and choose this one, the keyboard, and it will give you the Cyrillic keyboard. So you'll probably have to poke around and it will take a long time, but get a word in there and see what happens. Oops, just one T. And oh, okay, so it is Russian, and it's means brother. So that's the first thing you can do. You can also, if it's a less, if it's, well, in other languages, it might be easier to use this tool, the handwrite tool, and it's very forgiving. So, like, we can write that same word. and it looks kind of dumb. Like I'm just using my trackpad actually on my laptop to write this, but look, it's like, oh, you're saying this, aren't you? And it figured it out. So, and I sometimes I write like really, really badly. Um, like, yeah, we could do like, ugh, and it knows I'm saying papa, even though, that was not good. Um, so that's a fun tool. And yeah, lots of languages in there. I love this thing. You can also supposedly upload documents in these formats, though I really haven't had much success with this. I suspect that documents where the text is live, like a Word document or a spreadsheet or whatever, will do much better than a PDF type thing because it really doesn't read those very well. So, yeah, I would get out my phone and use the app version if it's going to come to that. So that's Google Translate, which you probably already knew, but it would be remiss not to mention it. So, on to our top 10 languages with tips. The first language is Latin. Not that it's super common these days, but it is a nice thing in old. It is a thing that you find in old books and bits of paper and so forth. So, some things about Latin are that, first of all, it's going to be generally in things that are quite old, probably 18th century or older, tending more towards 17th, 16th century. And, if you find something older than that, then that's awesome. But you'll notice in Latin that V's are used a lot for U's. Also sometimes for V's, depending when they were, what the typesetting style was. And let's look at some text. So some things that are really common in Latin are words that end in an m, an and an us, like an is. Let's find an us word. And a miss. I'm sure you see one and you're like, you're stupid. Oh, here's an us word. There's also lots of short words that start with Q. Like ki, qui, quam, quoque, quis, quod, lots of those. The small word odd is used a lot, like ad hoc or ad lib. The word sum, this is an S actually, is used a lot. It's part of to be. And this like old-fashioned S is because of when this was typeset, not because it's Latin. So you'll see that in other languages as well. Here's another one. There's also these ligatures, like this is an ST, Augustinus, which is again because of when it was typeset, not because of Latin. Here's another one, double S. Latin also doesn't have a lot of accents, if any. That's possibly up to the typesetter's discretion. And it also, what else can we say about Latin? Yeah, it's going to be in old stuff generally. This is also Latin. It's also going to have this AE letter, which is called ash, fairly frequently. Not always typeset this way, but it often is, and it's in words like Caesar Even in English, it's sometimes used that way. So here you see a ton of them on this page here. Also, the word et is and in Latin, and that's very frequent. And there's, see that word, AVSTRI, ash there. That's the V used as a U, and there's the V used as a V for Vienna, Austria. Obviously, those are not native Latin words, but it's how you'll find them spelled. And again, there's those funny S's because of when this was printed. And yeah, lots of odd and is and os and there's quoque and words. Also, double I's at the end of words are fairly common. This is also a double I, even though that looks like a J. That's a typesetting era thing, style thing. So just ignore it. Yeah, and years will be anno, and written in Roman numerals most likely. There's et again. Cum is also a common word. It means with. And yeah, so Latin. Boom. Next, Italian. So a little bit of overlap with Latin. There are some similar words, but Italian is a Romance language, so it's closely tied to Latin, like French and Spanish and a bunch of others. I think my biggest tip for Italian is that almost all the words end in a vowel, and if you start looking at that, you'll see they really pile up in a way that other languages don't. So vowel, 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 vowel. Oh, a word that doesn't end in a vowel. Vowel, 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 vowel. So you get the idea. Italian is very words that end in a vowel rich, obviously. And there's also a lot of double consonants in Italian. Sulla, della, cattedra. I don't really know how to pronounce Italian, but they're very common. And this letter E on its own is and, sometimes with an accent. So that's a very common word. A, di, della, della, all very common in Italian. And, well, obviously this is printed in Naples, so that's another big clue. But, you know, double letter, double letter. I mean, I think we have a pretty good passing familiarity with Italian, if from food, if nothing else. So it's not too hard to recognize. Okay, this is also Italian. And I just wanted, why did I want to show this? I guess just, you know, very few accents in running text. Like I see one in here somewhere. Oh, and Gia. And so it has this kind of clean look. And again, words that end in vowels. Yeah, that's Italian. Next, French. So unlike Italian, French uses a ton of accents and it uses them fairly frequently. I think I typed up a list. I don't know. Spoilers. Okay, French. So French uses the acute and grave accents going in both directions. Circumflex, the cedilla, the umlaut or diacrisis, the OE ligature, possibly also the AE ligature in borrowed words, and even uses a diacrisis on Y sometimes, but that's usually in names. These are the uppercase, this is the lowercase, and oftentimes accents are left off the uppercase for typesetting reasons and just to make it flow more smoothly, but they're generally kept on the lowercase. And French uses these as quotation marks, usually angle brackets or guillemette. It also sometimes uses these ones we're accustomed to, but these are more characteristically French. Also used in other languages, but French is one of them. So, I'm totally giving you spoilers. I'm sorry. So here's some French, and we see lots of accents, la portée. Also, there's lots of apostrophe action, like J apostrophe j'entends for when it's je is I, and that's often contracted with words that begin with a vowel. Also L, same deal for le or la. And so le, la, de, there's de, de, are all very common words, small words in French. Et, like Latin, except pronounced differently, and also very common. A lot of little keywords, kind of like Latin, key. I won't see any other ones. And also, this word c'est is very common, and it's like c'est la vie, so it might, stick out to you as French right away, which is handy. Lots of accents. I mean, they're generally the acute and grave ones are the most common, but it just has that decorated feel, unlike some languages. There's that OE. It's not used that commonly anymore. This is an older piece, but we're talking about older pieces. So those are some characteristics of French. Let's move on. So German. So older German stuff is going to often be in this kind of script, or type, which is black letter. And you'll probably notice first that it's really hard to read if you're used to reading, nice Roman typeset letters. It is very vertical. It's called black letter because, it sort of appears quite dark, individually, letters individually and as a block. It's quite dark text here. And so that's your first clue that it's German, is that it might be printed in this black letter. There are other kinds of type that look similar, but not the same. This extreme verticality. And if you think about it, it's written with, or it derives from a type of calligraphy written with a broad nibbed pen. So going up and down makes that nice black line, and going sideways or vertically just makes a bit of a hairline because you're not using the whole breadth of the pen. And even in this type version, you see that characteristic. Like I know this isn't super clear, but all these letters have these up and down strokes that are very dark, and then stuff like an E, you can barely make out that it has a crossbar. A thing in German also, and this might not come up that often, is that they put a period after the day in dates. So like here, where it says 17 Tag something. I wonder what month that is. Ugh, I can't read it very well either. But anyway, so 17th day of something in 1562. This period is not common in a lot of languages. And we're going to move on to some more easy to read German, but this is, if it looks like this, probably German. And you can sort of decipher it if you try. Some of the capital letters are really difficult, like squiggly weirdness, but you can make it out eventually. And you can sort of see INTERMONATS. Like, it's not that bad. Apologies, I am still getting over bronchitis. Thought I wasn't gonna have a coughing fit, but haha. Anyway, German. It uses the umlaut a lot on A, O, and U. It also uses this letter called the S set, and it can look like that, or like this, or like a little different than either of those. These are just different fonts. And this letter is just a double S. It's this one character that represents two S's. So when we look at this typeset German, there's one right in there. It's always in the middle or the end of words. It doesn't ever appear in the beginning of a word. In German, the common little words are die and, oh, I can't find them. Die, das, ein, aber, but, let's see, what other ones? Und is and it's and. Very common word and very characteristic of German and not other languages, so that's a good tip off. Und, auf, einer. These are all dem, den, common little articles and conjunctions and prepositions in German that you'll see sprinkled through any text. Ein. Also in German, they capitalize nouns. So, like, this is ein Kind, a child, and child is capitalized for no other reason than it's a noun. And so you'll see like more capitalization than in other languages, and more sort of seemingly random capitalization in the middle of sentences. And Yacht Club, not German. Here's that period after the date. Yeah, I think those are good German tips. So, a language that sounds somewhat like German to English ears is Dutch, but there are some good clues to rule out it being German and being Dutch. One is that Dutch uses a lot of double A's, and Dutch uses a lot of this IJ ligature. Or diphthong, whatever you want to call it. There's tons of IJs in Dutch and not in other languages necessarily. So that's Dutch. This is also Dutch. And so there's some similarities with German, but it's a little bit different. We have lots of these U singular letter U's. Lots of these IJ words there. There. I'm sure they're all over. And double A words right there. And also, Dutch uses a lot fewer accents than German. They're quite rare, actually. Like, I don't see any in this text. Uh, yeah, but the IJ thing, I'm telling you, Dutch. Also, words like op, right there, very common, and not in German. And also, um, yeah, I'd say op is a good one. That is in another language, that and the IJ. So that's Dutch. Probably not super common, but I can try to trick you into thinking it's German. Who's our next language? Okay, Spanish. So I feel like people in North America either speak Spanish or have a really good understanding of what it looks like and sounds like. So I won't say too much about it, but there are some handy tips for Spanish, which are that it uses these inverted question marks and exclamation points at the beginning of sentences and the not inverted ones at the end. That's very characteristic of Spanish. Also, um, it doesn't have any contractions that use apostrophes, so that's another fun one. And it does use accents, to L, whatever, K, but they tend to be just these guys. And what other things? Yeah, and you'll see words you know because you're living amongst many Spanish-speaking people probably. So like soy and que and porque and um, you know, todo. Um, yeah, it's Spanish is not going to be too hard to detect probably. However, there is Portuguese, which is has a lot of overlaps with Spanish. They are mutually intelligible mostly, Spanish and Portuguese, and uh, there's words that are written the same that sound different, and there's lots of overlap, but also lots of differences. handy tip, huh? Um, so here's Portuguese, and I think that the absence of the inverted question and exclamation marks are going to be your biggest tip. Also, I mean, obviously they wouldn't be on a title page like this, but Lisbon is a handy tip, a handy hint. Also, the enya, I think that's what it's called. Let's see, where do I have that? Spanish. This guy is not present in Portuguese, so if you see that, it's going to be Spanish. And if you don't see it, it might be Portuguese. Go back to that guy. Yeah, so kind of like Spanish, doesn't have certain features, and I don't know that much about Portuguese. I'm sorry. That's all I'm going to say. All right, the next one is Russian. So, okay, I'm going to go to my little language sheet here. So, Russian is written in Cyrillic, and I often see people guessing things are Cyrillic that aren't, and vice versa. So, I'll try to point out some things that can help you to pinpoint it. So, first of all, there are letters that are the same in Cyrillic as they are in our Roman alphabet, like A and B, but that's a V in Russian, and P, but that's an R in Russian, and H, but that's an N in Russian, so forth. K is the same. And there's also some letters that overlap with Greek. This is gamma, G. But there are some characteristic Cyrillic letters that aren't going to pop up in other languages. So this one I'd say is a key, the D letter. This one, je, it's big, it's weird, it takes up more space than other letters in the typesetting. Um, it's characteristic of Cyrillic. And probably also this guy, although this is not used that commonly, it's very sort of specific and weird to our eyes. Let's see. Russian does not use any accents. This is actually a letter that has that thing built in. When you see it typeset, there won't be any accents. And also, let's see, what else can we tell you? This is uppercase. This is lowercase. Not totally dissimilar. A lot of the letters are just smaller versions, like M and N and O. Actually, most of them are just smaller versions that only go halfway up the line instead of the whole way. So it's always quite linear, even in lowercase, although there are some rule breakers. So yeah, if you see something that might be Russian, I would look for this letter and this letter and this letter to confirm it. Oh, also this backwards R letter. I mean, that's what you would use if you were making a fake Russian movie poster, right? So that's got to be characteristic. So yeah, that one, that's a pretty common letter too. Let's go back to, okay, so here's a Russian magazine about chess, women's chess from the 80s. And so we see that je letter, zhenshina, zhenshin, women. And we see all these letters that are like our Roman alphabet. But then there's this guy, like, what's that? So Shachmatam. And there's this guy here, the D letter, that it's just kind of clues you in right away. It's Russian. Also, you might recognize this acronym if you were alive in the 80s. So, yeah, that's Russian. Another common non-Roman alphabet thing you might find is Greek, which is on this side. This is Latin over here, but here's Greek in type and in, I guess that's like italic type. So I think of Greek as the one with the math symbols. It's omega, some delta, or I guess you could say fraternal symbols, but I never really learned those. Sigma, like that's the thing in Excel, you used to sum sigma. So I feel like that's the easy way to tell Greek. It also has this peculiar angularity to it. Or I guess in this italic version it's kind of squiggly. I think I typed out the Greek alphabet too. Let's see. Yeah, so there are these characteristic letters like the omega and the delta. And see, look, it's kind of like that Russian D letter, and gamma is the same as the Russian G letter. And the sigma and whatever this cute trident is called. This letter is also in Russian. So I feel like, there's some very characteristic Greek letters and just this angularity. I think that's what lambda, which is also the same in Russian, clues you in that it's Greek. Greek does have accents when typeset. Let me go back to that guy. Yeah, see all these little marks all over the place. So that's another thing. Oh, I'll show you the Russian again. Russian just does not have accents. Let's see. Yeah, like, look, it's so linear. Very few letters go above or below the line, and there's no diacritical marks. So it just has this different look, Russian versus Greek. And one more non-Roman alphabet. This is Hebrew, and let's look at the alphabet. It's a short alphabet. I think it's 23 letters, and they mostly line up. There's a few ascenders and descenders, but mostly it's extremely linear, stays on its line. Doesn't have any accents, though I'll show you a kind of exception to that in a second. And, oh, it goes this way. It reads right to left, which you can actually really detect when you see something typeset. And let's look at that. So here's a page of typeset Hebrew. No accents, does have punctuation, like there's a comma, an em dash, period, whatever. Same punctuation we use. But you can see that the paragraph indent is over here, and then the paragraph ends over here, and there's the trailing space. So it's going that way. And yeah, I mean, I feel like these letters are also pretty distinctive. They don't really look like other non-Roman alphabets that we come across often. And then here's the exception I was talking about. Sometimes these little marks are used under the letters, and they are actually vowel markings. They're used in conditions, I believe, where people are not fluent Hebrew readers, like for second language type situations or kids or whatever. Because apparently, if you actually know Hebrew, it's very obvious what each of these words are without any vowel markings. Like these are all consonants actually on this page, but you know if you see these three consonants that it's, whatever word. And if you see these 5 consonants, it's whatever word. And the context, of course, helps. But if you are learning, then you get these added vowels underneath. So it's like this sound plus this sound, this sound plus this sound, this sound plus this sound, and this sound. And then it helps you to sound out the word, which you couldn't do as reliably without the vowels. So that is kind of an exception. This is a book that's, for English speakers who can, muddle their way through Hebrew to some degree, I guess. And yeah, so that's our 10 languages: Latin, Italian, French, German, Dutch, Spanish, Portuguese, Russian, Greek, and Hebrew. If you would like to learn about other ones, let me know and I'll see if I can tell you anything. And generally, any questions, let me know. I'm sorry if I mispronounced anything or got some granular detail wrong. I do my best with polyglottalism. I don't know, I just made that word up, but it's by no means an actual talent. So, yeah, enjoy deciphering your Rosetta Stones, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.